Cultivation Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Hamill, and today is a special episode because we took it on the road, which I've never actually traveled with the podcast before. But
traveling microphone.
Yeah, this is epic. I love technology for it, and we're continuing season 7 on really navigating change. It's a season of change. We've talked about my change, occupationally, and then identity that comes with that. So my guest today is a guest that you all have heard and seen if you've been a follower of the podcast for any amount of time. My friend David Specht, and ironically, this was not choreographed. This was not scripted. But we've both gone through some massive changes in our life almost at the same time.
Yeah.
And so it's been for me. Before we get into your story, I'll just pull a Ed Milet and talk about me for a second. Ed,
You gotta max out.
If you're listening, to assume Ed Milet.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. But to have somebody that is like literally making similar life decisions and the disruption that takes and walk through that, it's been really meaningful for me.
Yeah, same. And I think we talk about your circle mattering.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that when you get into certain frequency circles, a lot of the people are going through very similar situations. They're dealing with a lot of the same guideposts or points in their life,
Yeah.
those pivot points in their life. And it helps to say, oh yeah, hey, what happened when you did yours, or what happened when you did yours, Dave, or how are you navigating this? And
Yeah.
I think it makes a big difference.
Sure. Well, let's get into it as we're talking about
Okay.
change, and let's start with your change, and then we'll see what the story brings out, and we'll unpack some questions from that as we help our audience kind of possibly navigate their
Absolutely.
change in their life.
So, for those who do not know, I was born and raised in Louisiana, and I went through a good deal of change in my early adulthood life. I joined the Air Force. We traveled. I'm deployed. Those things. But for almost 30 years, we stayed in one community.
Yeah.
And over the course of 2021, from May to January 5th of 2022, the idea came that we were to change physical locations.
Okay.
And then the decision and the change. So within, what is that? 8-9 months.
Sure. Yeah.
We've left a place of 30 years and have relocated to Middle Tennessee, just outside of Nashville.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I much like reading a book, or if anyone is a faith follower reading the Bible, we read a sentence and we think, oh, it happened as quickly as we read that.
Yeah.
But even in that, there's a lot to unpack in 9 months, and still unpacking both physically.
Yeah, we're in a room right now that is shared space in a lot of ways.
And again, a lot of our stuff is still in storage, right? So there's the physical unpacking, but then there's the mental unpacking of all of that, and the relational unpacking of all of that. There's the identity unpacking of all of that. So 30 years in the same community. We're talking about now generations of,
absolutely,
in your case, specs in that community. So this decision to uproot, let's talk about you and your parents first, right? So what was it like to go, man, my dad was a significant pillar in this community, my parents, my mom, my dad, and I know that they've both passed, but that's still that past.
There is a legacy connection.
Yeah.
There. I mean, we owned the newspaper, still own the newspaper. And so, yeah, that factored in. Some people can make very quick decisions, major ones. I mean, I've seen people make them. And while it sounds like it's relatively quick, May to January, from the point of idea to the point of final decision.
Yeah.
It was a painstaking process. Because when the idea of, and just for the audience sake, the reason why we moved here, one of the reasons, or the idea, was we were at a conference here, and the speaker just happened to say, if anybody's looking for a new community, Murfreesboro is one of the best in the United States, fastest growing, blah blah blah. And it was just that little nugget
Yeah.
kept percolating in my brain going, you know, sometimes sometimes you have to leave Nazareth to be able to do anything
Mm.
significant.
Sure.
And it just kept coming and coming back to me. And but there were so many considerations. We have two boys. One of my sons is married. We have a grandson, 2 years old at the time,
Yeah.
or not quite two. He was two. He turned two during this process. And it was like, okay, what do we do about them? I mean, I don't want to leave my grandkids. I don't want to,
Hmm.
my kids at. I'm just kidding. But that was all part of the consideration, and it
Yeah.
was like, if we do this, we may radically change the family dynamic here.
Right. Right.
And so, over the course, we came back up here, gosh, I think 3 times during that process, and we're people of faith, so we prayed about it. I'm not going to say we fleeced God, but we're
Yeah.
like, okay, God, you better start slamming doors, or else we're going to step through them,
Sure. Sure.
because everything's indicating that this is what we're supposed to do. And understand, we weren't only pillars in the community. I was the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce for Minden.
Right.
So here is one of my voluntary jobs is promoting. Hey, this is a great place to live, work, and raise your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. You're a community
And here I
builder.
am, like contemplating a move.
Yeah.
And then I was a leader in the church, and a church that I've been in since 1998, and that's a major change.
Yeah.
And all of these things are running through your head, and so you're like, okay, we want to make sure. My wife and I we visited again in September with the entire family.
Okay. You brought the whole crew.
Brought the whole crew here. I went to a conference with my two boys. The girls drove around town, trying to get a feel for, is this a place where we want to live? And then when we got back home, Tina and I were just like, I want clarity. I want it to be the right decision. It's not that I'm afraid to make the wrong decision, but at the same time, in a major change,
Yeah.
you would fail fantastically, if it didn't work out. Now, one of the few benefits of COVID now is that the world has gone to a remote work status.
Sure. Sure.
So we learned really quickly through COVID that a lot of the day-to-day things that I did in what I would call my day job at
Yeah.
the time were things that I could do from nearly anywhere with the thanks of technology. So, that was one of the least worries on my plate. The rest of it was all the other things, the relational things and such. So we started doing a devotion called "Draw the Circle" by Mark Batterson. If you've read it, you know how powerful of an exercise that
Yeah.
is.
Right.
And we were doing that, and we said, okay, we've got to figure this out. If we're going to move, where are we going to move? This is a nice idea, but staying in Airbnbs is not a plan of action.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we decided to come up in between Christmas and New Year's with the whole family again. Rented an Airbnb, met with a real estate agent to say, hey, what would be some neighborhoods you suggest? That's all we were looking at. Okay, if we were to move,
Yeah.
we would probably do it next summer, get our affairs in order.
Yeah.
And they were telling us about the market being here, how people were moving in like crazy, that houses were increasing in price from the time the construction finished to the time they sold, that, the best thing, and again, possible part sales pitch, but it was aligning up with, it's time to make a decision.
Yeah.
Coach Michael Burt says that to decide means to kill off other options. And so we were at the point of, we have considered all the things that we can possibly consider. The only thing left now is to make a decision. And
Yeah.
my wife looked at the real estate agent and said, what's it going to take to get this house? How much money do we have to put down to solidify it so we don't get in a bidding war and go through the whole real estate process? And I looked at her like she was nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, it's time to do or die. It's time to make a decision. We either decide right now that this is what God wants and what we're supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
or decide that it's not, and let's quit considering. We're wasting valuable time
Yeah.
just considering.
So the part that I really feel like helps people in, okay, how do I apply David's story to me? How do I apply David's situation to my situation of change that they might be considering and that sort of thing, is that when you consider all of the ingredients of the change, that it's not just Hey, we had a job transfer
Right.
and we uprooted our family to go make more money, or and I know that those happen. I've moved my family throughout the history of our family for job transfers,
Mm-hmm.
different locations, that sort of thing. But we're talking about three generations that you've just mentioned, from your parents' legacy to you and the role that you and your wife played in the community, to your kids who now grew up there, went to school there. It's really, from the timeline, all they ever knew,
Right.
except for maybe probably visiting some family member somewhere or vacationing, right? But so the idea is, when you're going through the emotions or the process of deciding, instead of dabbling, right? So you came to that point with the realtor where you're like, okay, what's it going to take to just get in?
Mm-hmm.
And that was your moment of decision. What was some of the, or was there some fear, insecurity, doubt, second guessing, right? Like what was that like? How did you navigate that? What were some of those things that you were feared out, the messy side of, like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're
Right.
gonna do it afraid, if you will.
Right. And I think yeah, there was a lot of things that went through all of our minds. I started off the consideration talk about the family.
Hmm.
And when the kids said, we want to do this too,
Yeah,
then that kind of lowered that threshold a little bit. So
sure.
so if you get buy-in from the right people on your
Hmm.
decision, then it does lower that threshold and makes it a little bit easier.
And with that, let me just
Hmm.
interject there, and I don't want to mess up your train of thought, but you said buy-in from the right people. I would assume, I'm assuming now, I'm confessing that, based off of my experience, you didn't have buy-in from everyone, but as you said, buy-in from the right people.
Yes. So yeah, again, when you're in a small community and you're a leader in that community to some degree, I mean, it all depends on how you see yourself as a leader. Let's be honest. But all of a sudden, the shock.
Yeah.
The spectrum. Are they selling the newspaper? Are they da da da? All the things. Why are they leaving? There must be something they're running away from,
Hmm.
right? Instead of hey, they're chasing an opportunity or chasing
There's
a calling.
problems, yeah.
Yes.
Hey, wanted to take a quick break from the podcast to let you know The Life You're Meant to Lead, #1 new release on Amazon, is available both in the ebook, right? Kindle, Audible, where I read it, and the tree version. Make sure you pick it up. It's available anywhere in the world, so you can go to your country's Amazon if you're listening or watching from somewhere else. Pick it up. The Life You're Meant to Lead by Tom Hamill.
The other thing what we found, the ones that supported you, our pastor, for instance, he was one of the conversations that we were sweating the most because we were close on a personal level, not just
Sure. Parishioner,
spiritually. Yeah,
yeah.
right. And so, God had prepared him, and he basically said, "Look, I knew y'all were moving in October." I said, "How did you? We didn't know we were moving in October." So he was like prepared,
Yeah.
which made it better. And we've been back. I go back about once every 8 weeks.
Okay.
And so we go to dinner and stuff. So, I mean, it didn't strain that relationship. But the people in the community, what I would consider other community leaders, other community voices,
Hmm.
there were two sides. One was, we support you to your face, but we hear that I hear the gossip behind your back.
Yeah.
The other one is the ones that are proud of you that say, I don't know how you're doing it. I wish I could,
Yeah.
but I can't. And
And
and that's really the two sides that we've had.
and really, that statement right there is why I wanted to do this season specifically on navigating changes, that I've come across a lot of people, the change they're wanting to make in their life isn't necessarily mirroring the change that you and I made,
Right.
in the sense of, we uprooted from the community that we were in, from the roles that we were playing, from the responsibilities, the image, the titles, that sort of thing, and we went somewhere completely new. I mean, we literally we like airdropped, paratrooped, dropped into a whole new community where we know no one.
Right. And it's what a weird feeling, right?
Yeah. So, I have come across and talked to, over the last year, people who are wanting to navigate change. It doesn't necessarily look like that. So this season isn't about you should uproot your whole family and move. I don't think that's the change everybody needs to make. But it is the idea of like, oh, there is that adventure, there is that investment, there is that pursuit or that passion that I wish I had the courage to go make, that I see you're making similar. And so hopefully navigating some of the messiness of our change and exposing it, living it out loud, if you will, provokes or inspires some people to go, oh, I can make this change in my life.
And I would go on to say too that on the other side of the decision, there's
Yeah.
still a bunch of messiness.
Yeah.
So in our situation, the actual move part, like the buying of a house, selling of a house, really was relatively simple. We sold our house and bought this house and closed. Again, made a decision on January the 5th. Closed on the sale of our house in Louisiana February 10th. Closed on the sale of this house, the purchase, on like February the 17th.
Okay. Yeah.
So really compressed time. Somebody says, you can't move God. When God said it's not time to move, you can't move him. But when he says it is time to move, you can't stop him. That's what it felt like.
Sure.
But there's been messiness since February 17th that we've had to navigate.
Yeah.
New church, new trying to build new community circle, going from emptiness to fullness, because the entire family lives in this house with us.
Yeah.
Which is, again, it's a great thing. Love having family around, but it's a major change to the routines that Tina and I had gotten used to as empty nesters.
And I would imagine your kids too. They
Absolutely,
lived out on their own.
Now
They're back in mom and dad's house.
Yeah, mom and dad are still mom and dad, trying to exert mom and dad rules that may or may not apply to a 20-something-year-old adult anymore. So there is messiness, but that's also not a sign that you made the wrong decision.
Sure.
Don't judge it by the messiness. Judge it by the progress. And what we have found since coming here is we've gotten into bigger rooms. We have started bigger relationships. We have really begin to step into what we believe it is our purpose as a couple.
Yeah.
And that we had all but exhausted our ability to impact in Louisiana. Now all of a sudden Tennessee is opening up as this and beyond.
Yeah.
One thing about living near a major city, people from all over come here on a regular basis, so you connect with people that you would never connect with in the remote rural areas of other places.
For the analytical person, for the one that really likes to have all the ducks in a row and details, all that stuff, how much since February 17th, how much has just been unscripted and felt like you're flying by the seat of your pants, making it up as you go?
Oh,
like, has there been
way
surprises where you're like, oh, we didn't even think about this or that? Or...
Oh, yeah. There was all kinds of crazy. It's like certain things that you assume, and I'm gonna boil it down to something really stupid.
Yeah.
But this is just one of the things. So Tina had a extra long Yukon, Suburban, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Didn't fit in our garage.
After you bought the house.
After we bought the house.
Yeah.
And so we look at it, and when we were here in Tennessee, and I'm like, well, I'm going to leave it parked outside, da-da-da. It was paid off.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden, we need a smaller vehicle simply because there's no room for this vehicle.
Yeah.
Now I have a car note. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you're like, okay, that was not planned.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, we've got everything paid off. We'll just have a mortgage, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden life happens of things you didn't plan. We have 3 households of stuff.
Sure.
So, we've got, if I wish the audience could see the room we're in, but
your wife probably doesn't.
No, but we're in a media room, but yet there's racks of clothes in here. There's, other sundried items in here simply because 3 to 1 creates some friction and some lack of storage issues. And so those are the things that you're like, oh, we'll navigate it. It'll be all right. And then when you're in it, because I'm the older I get, the more in order I need things.
Sure.
And so when you're navigating our season right now, it's a very controlled chaos.
The reason I wanted to bring that up is because I feel like we a lot of times in our, and I don't want to bash social media, I'm on social media, but in our Instagram world, we romanticize the change. And then we start doing the comparison where it's like, well, my change that I'm making is nowhere near as romantic as your change that I see you're being posting, and oh, how great it is and how wonderful. And the thing that Jamie and I have learned through the change that we're making is we don't have all the details.
Right.
We still, to this day, I would tell you, we made the right change at the right time, just with how it's affected our daughter, our daughters, how, which, by the way, at the end of the season, I think it's the last episode, Kylie gets to be a guest.
Oh, wow.
First time ever. She helped me launch it all behind the scenes and running everything and producing everything, cameras and stuff like that. But now she'll be a guest here on the show. But nonetheless, it's affected a lot of people, and it hasn't. Not that it's been hard in the sense that, like, everything is doable, everything is figure outable, but maybe it was surprising, like, oh, we didn't even think to prepare for that, or we didn't think that that was coming. Like, oh, to make this change, we're gonna have to sell your car, and I mean, probably thinking back on it, it would have been easier to sell it somewhere else and not move the thing here.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that was yeah. There's things in my garage right now that I'm like, why did we bring it from Louisiana? There's no need for it here.
So just that and I say that because I want to bring out to anybody watching and listening that have your heart, your mind, your soul open to the discovery process in the season of change.
Oh yeah, I would say there's two ways you can look at any major change. One way is all the challenges, because a major change just brings challenges. It's the nature of major change. Or you can look at all the growth.
Yeah.
And I have personally grown over the last several months in patience, in understanding, in opening myself to see different people. And what we didn't talk about in this whole change was the cultural change. So going from rural Louisiana, and you're like, well, you're still in the South. Yeah, but there's different phases of South.
Sure.
There are different things, and being able to open up to people with different worldviews without, not saying judgment, but like, oh, okay, so you can be a cool person but not agree 100% the way I think.
Yeah.
And that has really been probably one of the biggest growth factors for me. Not that I was narrow-minded or narrow in my thinking, but my environment was narrow, so I didn't have to.
Yeah, your bubble.
Yeah, and people need to understand that they need to travel. They need to go to different places. Maybe not move like we did, but you know what? Go spend a week in a place where you know no one, and just be open to what that person with purple hair has to say, or whatever, because we do make snap judgments. And I believe that the people who are able to get over their snap judgment and really open up and listen to that other individual and see where they're coming from and where they're at is a huge, huge attribute for future success.
I think the growth process is like so valuable in that. I think one of the surprises that we have found too is that people are nicer than maybe the world or the news or whatever would tell you. People are nicer.
Yeah.
I mean, we're doing some things to jump into community. I know that we were talking about y'all's farmers market.
Yeah.
That you go to every Saturday, or that it's hosted every Saturday. I don't know that you go every Saturday, but you go down there and you're like, whoa. When you come out of your shell or of your bubble and you start to really interact with the world, and again, maybe people don't look like you or think like you or believe like you, whatever, but people are nice.
People are genuinely nice. In a very general sense, if you want to start an argument with anybody, it's easy. But if you just take somebody as human to human.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably, again, I get back to when you're talking about making a major decision, and I know we're talking about my move, but look for the growth opportunities. Don't look at all the challenges.
Yeah.
Look for those growth opportunities. I I have a mortgage, but you know what? I have 5 different friends now in real estate as a result of the relationships that were started during that mortgage process.
Yeah.
That are providing me and my family opportunities moving forward. So, owing money on a house is a challenge. New relationships that can pan out, in all different ways, whether it's relationally, financially, whatever.
Right.
They're both there in that same decision.
Yeah.
So it all depends on what you're looking for.
I think the biggest thing is, and I would just call people to action this way. If there's been a change stirring in your heart, be wise about it. Yep. Get counsel on it, from the right sources. Understand that you're going to get some pros and cons, yeses and nos, supporters and haters. At the end of the day, you're the one that has to decide.
Absolutely.
You got to make the decision. And I would just encourage people that the future you is waiting for you to courageously make this decision now.
Every time. Absolutely.
Because you are not the same David as a year ago. And I'm not the same Tom as a year ago, because we decided and made this change in the growth, even through the barriers of frustrations and obstacles and surprises that we didn't anticipate. And so on the front side of the change is fear. On the other side of the change is breakthrough.
Absolutely.
And
I would add one last thing, and that is your courage to change will help somebody find their courage to change.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the show today.
Absolutely. I love it.
One last plug.
Okay.
And if we need to edit this off and this has an abrupt ending, you'll know why, because we decided to scrap this one. But David is getting ready to re-release a book, Old Dogs and New Tricks, and we're saying it publicly, maybe here for the first time, I don't know. But he's literally living out loud the principles that he's talked about in the book. And so when is it available?
I'm hoping by January 1st.
Okay.
That's kind of where my head is on it. It's ready to go. It's at the printer.
Yeah.
All I got to do is give them the thumbs up and we can release it. But I want to do it right, and I want to have my focus right to be able to add value aside from, hey, buy my book.
Yeah, sure.
So I will say, it might be an excerpt from the book, but I say this. The 1.0 version of anything is usually terrible. And the 1.0 version of Old Dogs, New Tricks, while some great nuggets were in there, I was not mature to the place of where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And I believe that this will help a lot of people that are in the same boat that I am. And that means that, it's aimed for people who are, not to put age on it, but like in the middle part of life.
Yeah, sure.
Where they feel like, okay, part of life is they just don't get, but yet they have to navigate in order to move forward.
Yeah.
And so it's just to help, awaken that leader, and how can I lead when everything around me is crazy. I
am excited about it. I have been a part of and love this project, not just the message of the book, but really the thing that I think is really powerful is that your perspective has changed, your motivation for it has changed, and the value that you're trying to bring to people has changed, and it's made it such a better project this time around. Not that it wasn't good before, but like you were saying, that change that happened. So from when this episode drops, we're talking about maybe 2 more months away from that release. So how can we find you? How can we follow you? How can we keep up with you so that we're aware of when that book comes out?
David Specht on Facebook, on Instagram. Follow me in either one of those places. You'll find plenty of content about what me and my wife do as health coaches, and other sundry leadership items, because leadership is a passion of mine. Look for it on Amazon when it releases. That'll be the exclusive. We have an exclusive deal with Amazon.
Yeah.
No. But and when we do it, we'll do it right, and there'll actually be some auxiliary content that goes with it. It's not, you're not buying a book, you're buying a system that will help you move forward.
Awesome. David, thanks for being a guest today. Hey, you've been listening to the Cultivation Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Hamill, and looking forward to you making that change. And we want to hear about your change. So if you've been deciding something, going through something, we want to know your story. So look us up on social media. It's at Tom Hamill. Again, that's on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, Twitter, all of those things. So we want to hear from you. We read those, we respond to those. Thanks for listening today. Thanks for checking out this week's episode. Be sure to hit the like button, as well as make your comments in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you and journey with you. Also, hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on all the other incredible content we have coming at you.